Welcome back to another video, guys. Today I'm going to be completely restoring this 1993 DA Integra. This is one of my older cars. I sold it probably a year and a half ago, and it's been passed around, neglected a little bit. It's been through it. So first thing I'm gonna start with is the sound deadening. I'm gonna do the good old dry ice trick where you just put dry ice over everything and then let it get really cold and you can just chip it all away. And as you can see, it works pretty well. I got pretty much all of it out. It still looks disgusting, but yeah, it's a little bit lighter. Then because I'm wrapping it, I have to chip all of this clear coat off, and then I'm gonna blend everything with this 320 grit. Just make sure it's all smooth. But the clear coat's peeling everywhere too. This is gonna end up biting me later in the future, you'll see. I was gonna do something with the hood, but I decided not to, just because the hood doesn't fit with what I put inside of it. So you guys are just gonna have to wait and see what it is, but yeah. This is after I've sanded a bunch and blended a bunch. You could see it looks pretty smooth. Yeah. Here's what the interior looks like so far. You can see I've taken a lot out, but the back seats and all the back plastics are still in, as well as the door panels are still in. But I'm gonna end up stripping everything in the inside and just redoing it. Here's a little before and after when I took these badges off. I don't know what they used to put them on, but they did it wrong. That's it all sanded down. There's also some body work I had to do, so you could see some Bondo in a few places. There's a few dents and stuff like that. But got the taillights out, doing some more body work right there, as you can see. And this is the part that I really messed up on, so you guys are just gonna have to continue to watch to see what I mean. Here's the inside, completely stripped. You can see it's disgusting, and there's a bunch of rust in the back that I'm gonna address a little bit later. But yeah, so I cleaned all that up, and then I washed the car. This is like, I'm gonna say the 4th time I washed this thing. Every time it dries, I keep finding more clear coat that's peeling, so I have to go and sand it down again, and it's a whole process, so I just keep washing it. But this is the last time I washed it. Every other piece that I had to sand down, I just wiped the panels down with some rags and make sure it was nice and dust free. Here's what it looks like after the wash, and here's kind of a closer look at the before on the engine bay. You can see that the intercooler piping's kind of just hanging there. I'm gonna end up wrapping this passenger door first. You could also see a lot of the sanding that I've done. There's a lot of spots that I had to smooth out. That took forever, but yeah. I also had to take these door panels off so I could get to the outer handle and take that out just to make it easier to wrap. speaking of wrap, here's the start of the wrapping time lapse. If you guys don't want to watch all of the time lapse clips of me wrapping, I'm gonna try to put a timestamp up in the corner to like skip it, just so you can see the final result. So I was wrapping the trunk on this thing, and I don't know if you could see with the light reflection, there's a bunch of like little stuff under it, which I didn't even see when I first prepped it. So on this side, what I ended up doing is just hitting it all with like 600 grit. here's what the wrap looks like so far. Definitely took forever. It didn't turn out the best, I'm not gonna lie, but it looks so much better than it did before. So yeah, now on to the more fun part, the mechanical aspect of things. I don't really like the body work too much, as you can see, but yeah. This is the rear crash support. You can see it's all rusty. I pretty much ended up just using a wire wheel and grinding it down, getting most of the rust off, and then I hit it with some rust inverter. In here you can see I got parts scattered everywhere, but I painted the handles black. They're gonna be matte black, which turned out very nice. Here's the headliner. I'm wrapping it with like black suede, so I think that looks way better than it did before. Here's the car without the headliner in it. You can see I just got the sunroof back in, and I also put that suede on the actual sunroof piece. Here's some more trim pieces I was painting black. This is when I started putting the interior back together, so that looks great. The headliners put in, looks really nice, I think. It definitely has some contrast with the purple, which I like a lot. This is like kind of after I cleaned up the back plastics a little bit. You can see then I started to address the rust on the bottom. You can see it looks nasty, so I used the wire wheel, cleaned all that out, and then I put some bed liner, and the bed liner dries like kind of a matte but has some texture, so that turned out great. Hopefully it won't rust again. And then for the biggest change, now this car has carpet, and it's just beautiful. This is where we kind of started running into some problems. You could see the radiator support was welded in. It's a whole new one because the car was crashed, so I had to cut the whole thing off. Usually you can just drill out the spot welds, but I wasn't able to do that this time. This is probably one of my favorite parts, which is just taking everything apart in the engine bay. I just like stripping it down, you know, making it look nice. It's always cool to know that like when you put it back together, it's gonna be so much better than it is, if that makes sense. So that's kind of what keeps me going when I'm doing projects like this, especially ones that take this long. I think this was around like a year project, so yeah. Here I was kind of just taking some little stuff off, some grounds and some hoses and stuff like that. And then I get to the drivetrain stuff. So obviously you gotta undo everything. So upper ball joint, lower ball joint, the tie rod as well. You can see I thought I could get away with the wrench, but I couldn't, so I got the impact out, zipped those bad boys out. I just took everything out because I'm redoing it all, so. I thought it was kind of a cool angle to record all this work, if that makes sense. I bought a new aftermarket traction bar as well, so we gotta take this old one out, and it's cut and messed up, so it's a win-win for me. And now it's time to try to get this front end off. You can see I tried with the drill bit a little bit, and then I kind of just decided to use the angle grinder and just cut the whole thing off. It was giving me a ton of pain, so I kind of just like brute forced it off, if that makes sense. There was a ton of stuff that was just so messed up, so I just tried to do whatever would make the most sense in my brain. This piece on the horn was an absolute nightmare trying to get off. I don't know what had it stuck so much, but I ended up cutting so much off of it. This one and the other side was also pretty tough, but not as bad as this one. I don't know what was going on with it. But I was able to get it off, as you're seeing here, with a lot of persuasion, if you will. Also, don't mind this little funky angle. Definitely didn't think about that when I was recording this. The piece I'm looking at right now had a little fold in it. Not the one that I'm messing with, but a little farther up towards the fender. It has a little fold, so I gotta figure out what to do about that. There's also a little crease farther back that I had to weld up. There's gonna be some clips of me welding and grinding. There's tons of body filler, so I ended up replacing pretty much all of it with weld, so it's like solid metal. Here's that body filler I was talking about. It totally coated my camera, or I would have recorded a little bit more of me taking it off, but as you can see, everything got all messed up after that. This process definitely took forever, so it's probably going to be a pretty boring video to look at, but I'll try to do my best to explain a couple things and talk over most of it. So pretty much all I'm doing right now is filling voids and grinding the metal down. I'm essentially just using the welder as like a body filler, if that makes sense. So I'm welding divots and then grinding it flush, so welding the other divots and then grinding those flush. So it's definitely a process, but I think it's way better than actually filling it with Bondo. But I did end up getting it pretty decent. I had to go through and grind all the welds down, of course, because it would look kind of weird just to leave a weld right there and everything else be smooth. Then I start draining the oil so I can pull the motor here in a few minutes. I also did a little bit more work on the horn on both sides. It was pretty messed up. I don't know what they were doing when they welded it, but it didn't come out that great, and there was so much body filler all over the backside. So I had to chip it out. You can see me with a hammer and a chisel literally just chipping out Bondo. But after I got all that out, I re-welded it and made sure it looked nice, and then yeah. As you can see, the motor's pretty much ready to come out. There's like barely anything holding it in. I think it's just mounts at this point. So I'm about to take that out just because I needed some more room to work on that horn. And then, yeah. Here there was a broken bolt in the trans, so I had to get that out, and then I had to fix the threads. I think I put a helicoil in it. Actually, I had to drill it out and put a helicoil, but came out all right. Oh, I guess there was still the wiring harness I didn't disconnect yet either. But I took that out, and then the motor just falls right out pretty much. All right, I'm about to show you guys how to go from this to this right here. Basically just pulling the hub, bearing, and lower ball joint out. Okay, first thing you're gonna wanna do, if you're alone, I'd throw it in a vise. Just by yourself, it's way more difficult to do it without a vise, just because there's nobody else to hold it. Then you're gonna grab some sort of hub puller. This one's called the hub grappler. Basically what this is gonna do is let you pull the hub out from the bottom. So basically it's gonna look something like this when you set it up. You see these arms go on the bottom lip right here, and then the bolt goes through to the bottom, and then there's like a little adapter that holds onto the bottom of the hub. And then you gotta hold this with a wrench, and then I like to use an impact to take it off. You could use like a ratchet or something, just the impact makes it way easier. So this is about halfway through. You can see this time it is gonna separate the bearing, but I'll show you guys another trick on how to get that undone. But yeah. So here's the hub I just took off. You can see the bottom piece of the bearing is on here. And also there's a snap ring in here that you're gonna have to press together, pull out, and that'll allow you to pull the bearing out this way. Okay, so to get the bottom bearing off, the easiest thing is to use this tool. I think it's called like a clamshell. Basically all it does is you hook onto the bottom of this right here, and then you're gonna put something right here and just tighten it, and it'll pull it all off. So yeah, using that tool is pretty self-explanatory. It works really well actually. But now it's on to getting the bearing out. So first thing you're gonna wanna do is get the snap ring out right here. Okay, so I got that snap ring out. And I also took off the dust shield, aka the heat shield as well, just to free up some space. And I'm gonna keep them off anyway, just cause it looks better without them, and I'm kind of going for like the show car look, if you know. Okay, so to pull the bearing out, we're gonna go back to this hub grappler. Pretty much the same thing, except on the bottom, you're gonna use this little piece, which basically just holds onto the bearing, the full side of the bearing. Okay, here's it all set up. Let's see. So what I'm gonna do is tighten this, and it's gonna pull it right out. And yeah, it just pulls it right out. So for the lower ball joint, as you can see, there's also another snap ring. This one separates instead of closing together. So all you're gonna do is put your snap ring pliers on, spread it open, and then pull it forward. The easiest way I've found to take these out, because we're not saving it, I like to put a socket on it, and then I'll use a jackhammer and just push it out. So the jackhammer wasn't working. I just ended up using this 4-pound little sludge, and I just hit right out. So yeah, that's pretty much just how you disassemble everything. usually where I go from here is I'll start cleaning it all up. I haven't decided if I'm gonna paint them yet or just leave them factory, but yeah. Here's what the engine bay is looking like so far. You can see we've been sanding for a couple hours. It really goes so slow, but it's getting there, I'd say. Not too much out, but enough for now. Got tired of sanding, so we put some paint stripper. I think it's whatever the orange kind of paint stripper is. I forgot the actual name of it, but you essentially just let it sit. So we put all that on there and then put some plastic on top and just let it sit. I think it said 24 hours. So we came back the next day with the power washer and kind of just try to spray it all off. It worked all right. Here's those knuckles with new lower ball joints, new studs, and new wheel bearings. I kept the hubs because they're still all right. But here's what the engine bay looks like after we sprayed all of the paint off. You can see most of the teal's gone. Now it's just that factory purple underneath, which is really what takes the longest to sand. So got a lot more work cut out, but yeah. And finally, off to the priming. So this is just me priming the engine bay, getting it ready for some paint. This is when you really get to see, like, this is where the work kind of pays off, I guess, because you get to see what it's going to look like when it has a coat of paint on it. And now we're off to the paint. This is kind of like an off-white cream color. I think it goes so nice with the purple. So yeah. Now we're gonna go ahead and move on to the B20 teardown. This is gonna be the motor that I'm gonna put into the Integra, if you guys were wondering. This is what came out of it. I'm just gonna rebuild it and make sure everything's good and up to my standards, of course. Probably put a VTEC head, but as you're seeing now, I undid the bolts to the valve cover, took the valve cover off. Now I'm gonna start undoing the cams. Yes, I should have undid timing first, but I was being lazy. Some of these bolts weren't tight. That was kind of concerning, but that's another reason why I'm tearing it apart, just because I don't know what's done to it, you know. I don't know what happened. So yeah, there I was taking the cam caps off. You could see some of them were stuck. Just a little bit of finesse. Then I undo the tensioner so I can take the timing belt off and get the cams fully out. I also undid the alternator and the pulley. It was kind of seized on there, so I had to give it some persuasion, if you know what I mean. But then I took the cams out and set them down on the valve cover. Took the whole rockers out of this head. Usually you want to keep them where the spots are, but I know how to do valve lash, and if I do end up using this head, I'll just redo it. Also, the bottom timing gear was also seized onto the end of the crankshaft. I ended up sanding the front of it, and then once I got it off, I got some valve grinding compound and put it on there, and then spun it a bunch just to create some clearance. You can see it definitely was like way stuck. I don't know what happened. Maybe it was like a little bit mushroomed, but yeah, got that off. As you're seeing, I sanded it down a little bit more before I did the whole valve grinding compound, just to get rid of that rust, but that's after the compound. And you're gonna see I put that thing back on and it spins pretty freely. There's a key for it, so I'm not worried about that. Then I'm gonna go ahead and take this T-post off as well as the water pump. I think I was missing a 14, so I didn't take the T-post off quite yet. There's a little bit of coolant in the motor, not a big deal. Like I said in the previous video, if you're not spilling stuff. But I got that water pump up, wiped up some of the coolant. There's that little dog, and we were watching him to make sure he wouldn't get into the coolant. There was like 5 of my friends over, so it wasn't really like nobody was watching him. Then I'm gonna undo the stuff for the oil pump. Then I'm gonna go ahead and get this manifold to come off, just undoing the bolts and nuts. Also, you saw the head move. I undid the head studs, so all that's loose. Some of them were kind of wonky. That's why you're seeing I'm gonna pull the head with the studs in it. It's not really a big deal. These lower bolts on this intake manifold were a little tricky, but nothing an extension can't get. Then you're gonna see I'm gonna pull it off just like that. I'm gonna go ahead and undo that coolant line. Obviously it wasn't on there very good. Just pulled that bad boy off. Then I'm gonna pull the head off after I get that little gasket, I guess. And yeah, undo the coolant lines too, of course. I haven't 100% decided if I'm gonna put a VTEC head on this, but I'm pretty sure I don't really want to keep the non-VTEC head just because I just like revving my stuff up so much. Then I'm going to go ahead and take off some of the smaller stuff. You're seeing me undo the bell housing bolts. Yeah, I kept the trans on just because it sits on the cart better, I think. Then my friend held the motor while I pulled the trans off. And then I'm going to go ahead and pull these alternator brackets off, as well as that sandwich plate for the oil feed on the turbo. Kind of cleaned up a little bit, wiped some of the crud off. And then I went ahead and sorted some of the stuff, made sure there was no oil in the oil pan. I wasn't 100% sure if I drained it before I pulled it, but I did. There was a few drops, nothing crazy. And yeah, then I'm gonna go ahead and flip the motor over and start taking that oil pan off. As you're seeing, that is not a very good sign. There's definitely some nasty stuff in the motor. Also, that oil pan gasket was misaligned, so that probably would have caused it to leak pretty bad. Then I'm gonna go ahead and take off that oil sump as well as the crank baffling, which reveals there is rods as well as pistons. It was a higher compression B20. I'm pretty sure these are the P2P rods. Don't quote me on that, I'm not sure 100%. Just what they look like, and they do have ARP bolts, which is nice. I also haven't decided if I'm going to epoxy this motor either. I feel like that would make some good content. I just gotta buy it pretty much. But yeah, I'm pulling these bolts out so I could see how the bearings look. The cranking bearings looked pretty good, if I'm being honest. There's no bad signs, but the coolant in the oil pan, that might be a problem. I don't know if the head's warped or the block's warped or the head gasket was just put on wrong. Could be a bunch of different things, but I'll probably end up getting the VTEC head resurfaced if I do that. If I don't do that, I'll get the LS head resurfaced, and maybe, just maybe, I epoxy the block and go get that resurfaced or decked. It'll just depend on what I end up doing. This is the last rod I'm taking out. I should have used like a rubber mallet or something to hit those bolts, but I usually just work with what I have. Here I am taking off that rear main cap as well as the oil pump, so I could then pull those main caps off, check those bearings, and also check the crank as well. I am going to buy some King's racing bearings for this motor just because those are my favorite bearings and I think they do the best in these motors, and the clearances always come out great. But yeah, and that's going to be the end of this teardown. And now it's time to break the trans down and rebuild this sucker. So pretty much you just undo all these 12 mils and then take out all the little pieces. So you can see like I'm taking off the motor mount bracket right now, and then there's a few bolts underneath that for like the reverse, the reverse gear. And then you pretty much kind of pop the case a little bit, and then you take some pliers because there's like a little snap ring up here. So you take some pliers and spread it open, and then the case just comes right off. Easy peasy. These older ones, the cable trans, come off pretty nice. Also, the shift forks are a lot different than the other ones. They come out in like one piece instead of two. But right now I just took out the shift selector, and now I'm taking out the reverse stack. So after you get that stuff out, pretty much all you do is pull the main shaft and the counter shaft, and the whole thing just comes right out. So now that both the shafts are out, we could finally start taking them apart and changing out the synchros. So the counter shaft is a little more difficult because there's a fat nut on the top, but the main shaft is easy-ish. Sometimes some of the bearings and some of the pieces do get a little stuck on there, so you gotta pry them off. But usually it comes off pretty smooth, as you're seeing here. I usually lay them out so I know what the top and bottom are, and I know exactly what order they go back onto the shaft, if that makes any sense. Right there, I'm just putting a little bit of fluid inside of the actual synchro, just so I'm not putting them in dry. In a previous video I made, I explained the difference between carbon synchros and just normal synchros. The carbon synchros just have a little carbon strip in the middle that helps slow them down a little better than just the brass slits they cut in normal synchros. I don't know, you can kind of see the stock ones are brass on the inside, and the carbon ones are like dark brown or almost black. But here I am putting it back on. You can see sometimes everything, it doesn't line up exactly like you want, so I am prying this piece back off, and I'm going to make sure everything's aligned 100% because it wasn't going on as smooth as I intended it to go. But yeah, you can see I'm oiling up the shaft just a little bit to maybe help it. It didn't really help. I still had to hit it on with the hammer, but I put it on the exact way that it came off. And with a little persistence, it went right on. And you got to make sure you line up the synchro in the slot it goes in. You can see there's little teeth hanging up. You just got to make sure it's in the exact spot. Also, when I'm hitting it on, you could see I was applying even pressure on both sides, or when I was going around in a circle, just to make sure I don't put one side farther down than the other. Just helps it go on a little smoother. There you're seeing I put the other synchro on. I'm pretty sure that is third gear. It might be fourth actually. And then I'm putting on the other gear, and then that's the last synchro, fifth gear. At the very top, the easiest one to change. Also the least important in my opinion. You're not really shifting to fifth gear very fast with longer gear ratio like this. This is an LS trans, so it has one of the longest gear ratios in the B series family. You can see I had to persuade that little bearing on the top on just a little bit. That nut came off pretty easily. I went and bought a 1/2 inch Milwaukee impact, and that helps a ton. Also, this gear was giving me a little bit of issues. You could see trying to hit it off. I tried a few different things. I think the camera did cut, and I ended up prying it off with just those 2 flat heads, but it was kind of a pain. It would have been so much easier if I had a bearing puller. If you guys are doing this at home, maybe rent one from AutoZone or something. I don't think they're that expensive. I just never felt like getting one. But after a while of me struggling, I eventually get it off. Like usual, I'm pretty persistent. This actually worked very well, just hitting the top. You can see it's sliding right off, and it's not putting very much pressure on the gear at all. Yeah, the rest of the stuff came off pretty buttery smooth. You can see, I know I said it earlier, the counter shaft is a little more difficult to mess with rather than the main shaft, just because some of the stuff gets stuck a lot easier than the other shaft. But there's only 2 synchros to this one, first and second, where there's 3 on the other ones. Also, if you guys didn't know, most of Honda's transmissions have like only 3 different sizes. Most of them only have 2 actually, but this one's a little older, it's a little special. It has 1 small synchro for 5th, but most of them only have like 2 different sizes. So first and second share the same size synchro, and third and fourth, or not third and fourth. Yeah, third, fourth, and fifth actually share the same size. This one was an exception where fifth had a small one. But this is pretty much the exact same thing as the main shaft. Just make sure you know exactly the way everything went on. You can see the same way it was hard to get off, it was hard to get on, and then it gets pretty easy to move at the bottom, so not a huge deal. Yeah, just slid everything on, maybe put a little bit of oil on everything just to make sure. But yeah, the gear stacks are pretty easy, I'd say. Usually the older they are, the easier they are to work on. This is cable trans, so that's why it went pretty easy. So pretty much all there is to do now is to take all those freshly rebuilt parts and put it all back together. I did clean up the case a little bit. I don't know if you can tell or not, but the inside is nice and clean. What you do is you put both the stacks together outside of the trans, and then you put the actual shift forks on the stacks and then slide the stacks into the trans. Kind of sucks, like it's kind of a weird process, but it goes in pretty easy if you do it that way. Then you go ahead and do the reverse stuff. You can see I put the little reverse gear in, then I put the shift selector on. It helps if you take out the 12mm D10 spring out of the actual like shift shaft, so then it can move freely. You don't have to fight 2 things at once, because it already is hard lining everything up. But yeah, it's pretty self-explanatory. You just put it back together exactly how you took it out or took it apart. I didn't torque the 10 mils in there, but I'm pretty sure it's like a 7.6 foot-pounds, very slight, you know. But yeah. Another thing I forgot to mention is to like make sure the diff and the gear stacks spin freely and it's all put together good, you know. You can see I was checking that a little bit. There is that 12 mil D10 spring I was talking about taking out earlier. Makes it a lot easier to do everything, but after that you just slide the case back on. Sometimes it's a battle on these older trans like the cable style. Very easy. I also changed the throwout bearing just because the clutch I bought came with a new one, and you can see it's all nice and re-greased. Now it's one of my favorite parts, throwing the motor together. Actually, I'd say my favorite part is pulling it all apart, but this is also nice. I love new parts, if that makes sense. But the first thing I'm going to do is unpackage the bottom main bearings. I'm going to throw those guys in there with no oil because I am going to be plastic gauging this motor. So I'm going to throw the crank in real quick and then grab the mains and find exactly what place they go into, just so I'm ready, so I don't have to look while I'm plastic gauging. While I'm doing this, I was also cleaning off the caps, making sure there was no dust or anything like that to mess up the measurements. That's why it's taking a little longer than you would expect just to put the mains where they go. After I got all the mains in place, I took them all out and put them in order on my table. I also forgot to mention I was putting the bearings in the actual main caps. That's another reason it was taking a little longer. But now you're seeing me put the little plastic piece from the plastic gauge on the actual crank journals. So now I'm going to put the caps back on, tighten them all down. I use an impact just to tighten them so it takes less time. But I obviously don't like really tighten them. I use a torque wrench. Torque them down in the steps. I'm pretty sure it's something like 20 and then 54 foot-pounds, something around there. I'm not exactly sure at the moment, but I do remember it was pretty close to that. You can see here I'm changing it and then torquing it down to the second step. Once I'm done tightening everything, I go and get a longer ratchet and break them loose with a ratchet instead of an impact, just because I don't want to skew the results and weaken the bolt, if that makes any sense. I'm not sure if the impact would, but better safe than sorry. Then all the caps have to come off exactly like they did before so I can actually measure. So I'm pretty sure this motor was, I always measure in millimeters. I don't know, I just thought Japanese motor millimeters, you know. I'm pretty sure it was a little bit looser on the inside than it was on the outside, but everything was in spec, so not a huge problem there. I could have gotten away without plastic gauge, but obviously that's why you plastic gauge, to make sure you're good. Now I'm going to go ahead and clean the actual main caps off, the little plastic off of there. I'm going to oil everything up with some assembly lube, make sure it's all coated so we don't start it up dry. Oh, can't forget the thrust bearings. You can see if you put some assembly lube on there, it sticks to the thing a lot better when you take the crank out. But the way I put them in is kind of just slide them through, and you can hit either side of the crank to make a little more room on the other side. There you can see the assembly lube on the actual bearings. I'm pretty sure I lube it up one more time before I put the caps on. Yep. And then go ahead and put the caps on. The exact same steps as before. Torque them down. You can see I tightened it with the impact again to save a couple seconds. But yeah. So there I just showed the torque specs. First step is going to be 18 foot-pounds. Second step is going to be 56 foot-pounds. So now that the crank's in, you can clean out the inside of the cylinder walls and get ready to put the rods and pistons in. So you can see me just using a rag, and then those are the bearings that I'm using. Thrust washer as well. So you cut those bad boys open, and then you put all the bearings on the rods. But yeah, right now I'm just cleaning off the rods and pistons. They are used. These are the ones that I got out of this motor. I checked everything. Everything looks pretty good. Yeah, so I'm pretty much replacing the bearings, so I know exactly what bearings are in it. I'm gonna plastic gauge and make sure all the oil clearances are pretty good, and that's gonna be pretty much it. Anyway, to get back to what you're seeing, I just finished putting the bearings in, and now I'm going to go ahead and clamp down the piston rings and get them in the actual block. This part can take some time. When I first started, I kind of got caught up on it a little bit. A little trick is to hit down the sides of your piston ring tool so it gets fully seated, and you got to make sure it's as tight as it goes. After that's done, I started on the whole plastic gauge process, which pretty much all you do is you take the little pieces of plastic and you set it on the crank. Here I rotated it so I could do all four at the same time. Probably not the smartest move, but I was trying to get it done relatively quick. And I'm super confident with the King's racing bearings. I've never had clearance issues before. I'm kind of just plastic gauging out of good habit. Just for when I end up using other bearings, I already am used to doing it with everything, so it's not going to be a huge deal. But yeah, as you can see, you pretty much just put it all together, torque it all down to the correct specs, and then you undo it, take a little piece of paper and line it up to the actual squished plastic and see what it says on the actual scale that they have. And for a Honda, the top two are good. I think it's 0.025 millimeters is tight, and 0.038 millimeters is on the looser side, but nevertheless still okay. But don't quote me on those numbers. I am just going off the top of my head. I don't really remember 100% what it is. It's close to that, that's all I know. Anyway, all of that checked out, so you just saw me clean it off. Now I'm putting assembly lube for the final torque sequence so I can put it together fully this time so I don't have to take it apart again. The assembly lube I use is from AutoZone. It's Lucas brand. I've used other assembly lubes, they're pretty much the same. A motor with assembly lube is way better than without it, you know, so yeah, just use it. Anyway, I'm pretty much done putting the rods and pistons in. You can see I'm torquing down the last two as we speak, and yeah. Now I could go ahead and put on the windage tray as well as the oil pump, the oil pickup tube, and the rear main. As I'm doing all that, I'd like to thank the sponsor of this video, myself. Currently, nobody's sponsoring me, so if you'd like to sponsor me, that'd be great. Or if you know somebody that would like to just give me some money or some parts, you know, something to help the pain in posting videos, if you will. Also, the editing kind of sucks. I'm pretty terrible at it. Trying to do better, but yeah, I just like to thank that sick sponsor that's not there for this video. It's actually not painful. I kind of like doing this, but okay, so I did a little bit more off camera. You can see I put this new rear main in, and then I bolted the oil pan down, but that's pretty much it. We go ahead and put like the alternator brackets and some of the other brackets, as well as the sandwich plate for LSV Tech, and obviously oiling for my turbo. And then I'm gonna go ahead and put the timing components on. I also still have to take the head apart and lap the valves, put new valve seals in, stuff like that. I haven't decided if I'm gonna go get it cut down or decked, you know, but yeah, I'll come back and record some more. First thing I'm going to get started with on the head is pulling the rails and the cam caps off, and then I'm going to go ahead and take out the plugs as well as the VTEC solenoid so I can remove the rocker rails so I can get down to the actual springs and retainers, because I'm going to change the valve seals on this. If I had enough money, I would replace springs and retainers, but I am running low on funds, just like everybody else, I guess. But yeah, I'm gonna end up using the stock ones. I've only had a few issues with the stock ones, but it was really just me pushing the limits. As you're seeing here, this little dowel pin was giving me a little bit of trouble. I kind of got stuck on that for a second, but I managed to get it out. No big deal. Also, these rocker rails were unusually hard to get out as well. I'm not really sure what's going on with that, but as you're seeing here, I used an extension and a mallet on the other end and just hammered them through. I had a really long extension because one of them was just not wanting to move, I guess. I think there's something weird with the actual head, not the rocker arms, because they moved just fine. But yeah, it's super weird stuff. After that, I'm gonna go ahead and lay everything out on the table so I know exactly where it goes. Then I'm gonna go ahead and take a 21mm socket and my hammer. There is a rag under it. I did put a second one just for some extra cushion, but pretty much all you do is you hit the spring, and it's like a quick and easy way to get the springs and retainers out. Putting them in, there's not really a good trick. I have a tool made just for a VTEC head, but yeah, I got all the springs, retainers, and valves out, so now it is time to lap the valves. Woo! My least favorite part of everything. The more I do it, the more I don't like doing it. With used valves, you have to pretty much sand the top or wire wheel the top just so you can get the suction cup to stick. And even then, you could see me struggling. It's just a huge pain. I don't know. I don't like lapping valves very much, but it's a necessary process to ensure your valves are sealing good. So, gotta do it anyway. But you could see here, it does take a while. I only recorded the first valve I did because it probably took around an hour. But yeah. Another thing too, when you're lapping valves, you gotta make sure you get all the valve lapping compound out. It could mess up a lot of things, so just make sure you clean it out pretty good. After all of that, I put the new valve seals in and threw all the springs and retainers back in. You can see those valve seals are nice and blue, the other ones are brown. Yeah, I put it all back together, didn't really record much. You can see they're all seated. I put the rocker arms back in. I didn't set valve lash yet. I'm probably gonna do that when it's in the car. Here I am getting the block ready for the head. You can see I'm putting the head studs in right now. I had a few buddies over and they are kind of just bored, so they helped me screw them in. You can see a bunch of hands on the same thing. And we got this super sick angle of my shoulder / armpit as they're screwing in the head studs. It's kind of annoying. These are only supposed to be hand tight. You can see I'm just using the Allen wrench to make sure they're fully seated. Not very much more pressure than hand tights. After that, I went ahead and grabbed a rag so I could clean the block surface so it sealed nicely when I put the head gasket as well as the head on. You can see also something I didn't show in the video. I had to drill out those front two dowel pins because that's an LS gasket, and LS gaskets, the dowel pins are in the back instead of the front. So with the LSV thing, if you don't get their special head gasket, I use like a step bit and drill it out to the necessary diameter, I guess. But yeah, here is the head on it. You can see I use a flathead screwdriver, and it just allows me to get all the way down to the actual studs and smear some of that lubricating ARP lube, whatever it's called, just so nothing goes on there dry. It also makes sure that you're getting accurate torque specs when you're torquing everything down. So that's pretty much the real reason. You could see here I'm just screwing the nuts on. I use my pointer finger. I'll like kind of screw it on and it gets hooked on my nail, so then I could line it up pretty easily. It's kind of a weird way to do it, but it gets the job done. I use the impact just to seat them. I don't let it impact at all. I just screw them down. Here you can see I'm torquing it down. The torque specs are 20, something in between 20 and 80. Usually I'll do like 40 or 60, and then 80 is the final torque spec. For these ARP head studs, I think they have some bigger ones, but these ones, the final torque spec is only 80. After all that's done, I throw the cams in there with a generous amount of assembly lube, just so they don't start up dry. I don't know how long this motor is going to sit, so I want everything to be relatively greased up, if you know what I mean. Then I'm going to go ahead and disappear for a second, go grab those cam caps, and start putting them on. So they're all labeled. There's like I through 5 and E through 5. The outside ones are pretty easy. The middle ones are all the same, so you gotta look at the number. They're actually not all the same. They have slight differences, but you get the point. Yeah, they all have arrows. The arrows point to the timing gears. Most of the arrows in the engine point to the timing gears. If you look, there's arrows on the pistons. There's only a certain piston on a Batara build for a D series that doesn't point to it, so something good to keep in mind. You can see I put the cam rails on. I had to buy all brand new hardware for this VTEC head. I don't know, when I bought it, I was unaware that all the bolts were stupid stretched, so kind of bummed me out, but the bolts weren't terrible. Like, they weren't cheap either. It was like 60 something dollars. But at the end of the day, it wasn't that bad. Again, I just used the impact to seat everything down, not to necessarily tighten anything. It just saves some time. Also, you're seeing it's missing a bolt. There's a bolt snapped off in there. I didn't want to play around with the extraction set because half the time it doesn't work. I need to get a nicer one, but that particular 10 millimeter should be fine. If I run into any problems I'll know what it's from. It should be okay though. I think it would be fine, so I just left it out. Didn't really bother. Here I am torquing down everything. I'm pretty sure the final torque spec on these is 21.5. The first step is like 12.5 or something around there. But yeah. The 10 millimeter bolts are only 7.2 foot-pounds. Do not try to torque them down to 20 because it will destroy them. It'll just break them just like that other one. Here I am getting the pulley on. I guess I'm just running around the shop actually. There's the key in there, the pulley's on there. If you guys have a pretty keen eye, you see that I missed the belt guard. I had to pull it all apart and put it back on after I realized, but kind of annoying. Whatever, stuff happens. But yeah, I'm running a VMS pulley on it. They're not the best for the engines because there's no active dampener, but at the same time it kind of makes it sound like an F1 car of how fast it revs up, just because these are like 95% lighter than stock. So yeah, I think it makes the drivability better, but at the cost of the bearings, I guess. The vibration are pretty bad for the bearings, but here it is all together, and yeah. Alright, here's the Integra so far. I have the fenders, like a couple bolts are on just to have them placed there, both sides. Headlights aren't bolted to anything at all. The bumper, just zip tied right there, and zip tied right there. Essentially what I'm doing, also yeah, there's jack stands holding the bottom of it up. Essentially what I'm doing is setting up everything to get ready to make this front end for it. So with nothing bolted on, obviously I gotta make something to hold the headlights and the bumper. So the plan here, there's this bolt. I'll put a plate on that and have this run diagonally until the bottom of the headlight. Then it'll be like this. Then obviously down here it'll be like that, and then back diagonal to this bolt. And then I'll have some bracing on the bottom, obviously some the radiator mount, intercooler mount, stuff like that. I never did show you guys what size radiator I'm gonna put in. This thing is absolutely massive. You can see compared to my hand, it's almost the whole thing. I also got this huge intercooler. I don't really know if it's gonna fit, to be honest. I might cut the bumper out a little bit more and maybe put like a lip or something, because you can see the traction bar sticks out a good bit. So if I can have the intercooler just a little bit higher than the traction bar, I think we'll be good. Only problem with all this is there's not much room for intercooler piping. But I'm gonna get this front end figured out, and you know, once I have that done, it'll be a lot easier to go from there. All right, here's what we got going on so far. You can see it took quite a bit of time actually, but I've been trying to make sure both sides are pretty symmetrical. It's pretty much centered, so yeah, the headlights fit in good. I'm gonna have to have like an L shape that comes up so you can bolt one of them in, but yeah. Okay, so wiring for the Integra, we got VTEC solenoid, coolant temp sensor right there, going to the Dizzy. I do not have a plug for this yet, but I'll get one eventually. I haven't decided if I'm gonna do OBD1 or OBD2. Got air temp labeled here. It's gonna be on the intercooler piping, throttle position sensor. You can see it follows down. This is where I'm gonna put either a bulkhead or a couple of connectors. You can see I have some Deutsch connectors over here. Then we have the fuel injectors. I try to do it as clean as possible. Obviously nothing's loomed yet because you have two go down here, two go down here. Usually I'll do all four going down to the middle, but as you can see, it's closed right there. So not a huge deal, but definitely changed from what I'm doing. Here you can see fuel pressure. I spaced it and gave it a little bit more just in case. I don't have the correct fuel rail yet, but I'll get one eventually, or I'll just tap that one. Alternator, with Fuel Tech, you only have to run one wire to essentially turn it on, I guess. Down here, oil pressure sensor. You can see everything is taped up nicely. Also, I have this little guy holding everything up to keep the wiring harness out of the way of anything. So nice and tucked. And yeah, I'll update you guys when I loom it all up and it looks all nice. All right, Integra update. You can see the motor is in. It was actually extremely painful. I'm not sure why. It's almost like these two side motor mounts aren't the right ones, if that makes sense. There was just way too much space in between. It was really hard to connect one and get the other one to fit. I had to loosen these and loosen this, and it was just the biggest pain ever, actually. But it's in, so don't worry about all that. It's in there. Now I could move on with some stuff. Obviously this isn't the turbo I'm gonna be using. I don't know if I showed you guys. Let me get a better angle. But there is some insane play. But yeah, old turbo, max speeding rods, journal bearing. It's bound to happen. It was on the hatch, but just put it on this for mock-up. Here we got the radiator for it, the intercooler, so I gotta make some mounts for that. But now I have a pretty good idea of how much room I have, because obviously the motor's in here. And yeah, I'm feeling a lot more motivated to do some more stuff on it just because of how far I've gotten. So yeah, I'll update you guys when I get some more done. Okay, so I had to do quite a lot to make this intercooler fit. First thing I had to do was chop this end off. I welded a plate on there. I didn't have a long enough plate, so I welded two plates together and then welded that on there.
Then I have the intake of it welded on here. This is just a piece of intercooler piping I had, so welded that on there. That will go to the turbo easily now instead of trying to find a way to go around or something. Obviously on the Integra there's not like any kind of room on the side to go under. This is like the only way to come up, and that would just look stupid, so this works out good. Then I went ahead and made some mounts. This one was already welded on, but the bottom ones didn't have any, so I welded some aluminum plate to the bottom. I'm obviously gonna clean up the corners, make it a little like this, I guess, so it just looks more appealing. But you can see those down there, and then I made this mount. It's off-centered, but I don't think it's really gonna be noticeable that much once the headlights and everything are on, so that came out pretty decent. Now I'm gonna make some intercooler piping for it. You can see over here, welding up some intercooler piping. Also, I just started TIG welding aluminum, so I'm not the best at it. I'm obviously trying to get better. That's why I'm welding a bunch on this car. So then when it comes to the nicer stuff like the CRX or the Civic, I got it down, you know? So obviously this could be kind of the test car. And then, yeah, we could go from there. But that's what we got going on so far. I still got to make some mounts for the headlights. The bumper is being difficult. It came all warped, so I just have it outside sitting up. So hopefully that piece will raise up. Yeah, I don't know what else to do, obviously, or not obviously. I got the sides tied because it was spread out a bunch. Really weird stuff. But hopefully there's enough sun today. It's pretty cloudy, but hopefully it'll get the job done. But yeah, I'll update you guys when I got some more done. This isn't gonna be the turbo I'm using, so I'm not gonna route anything on this side until I get the proper turbo. But I am going to finish this side and get a blow-off valve welded on to the intercooler piping. Not the actual blow-off valve, but the piece. Let's see if I can find it. Somewhere around here. But yeah. All right, so I got this side done. I didn't have a 90 that had a long enough side on it, so I welded an extra piece right there. Obviously that's not the same color. I think I'm gonna paint all the intercooler piping black. You got this, goes up, welded it right there, welded it right there. See, I think it looks pretty good. Then you can see the blow-off valve piece right there, the way I'm gonna set this up. Got this knockoff HKS one. Let's see. So either I'm gonna have this straight, let me get it in the slot, like this, pointing the nipple towards the engine like that, or I was just playing with another idea of putting the nipple like this and routing the line kind of backwards, and then it's straight with the body. So I haven't decided yet, but that is gonna be where the blow-off is gonna go. And yeah, I think it came out pretty good. So we got a pretty huge update. You can see I made a mount for the bumper. It's not the prettiest. I'm gonna pull this off, probably grind down some welds and paint it. Probably gonna be matte black, but you can see the two outer ones are done. I just welded this one up, so I'm gonna drill a hole, finish welding that, and yeah, the radiator support is almost done. The bumper is super wonky from when it got shipped. It's too wide, so I got it pulled in this way and I got it pulled in that way, and there's another thing that, like another bracket I made that pushes it up on both corners just so the fitment's pretty okay, but not bad. Now I gotta wire in some stuff. The last piece on the radiator support is the radiator. Funny enough, I got to mount up the radiator, and then this should be good for paint. Actually, I got to do hood pins as well, but yeah, it's looking pretty good.
AI bot that analyzes the stock market.
All right, pretty big update. currently I'm working on the exhaust. It's coming out pretty nice, I'd say. You can see I got the glove box holding the other piece up right now. That piece came out pretty nice. I did the harness like the last update. For this, I still have to wire in a lot of the stuff in the interior, but the gauge cluster is in. All the wires I need for the gauge cluster are right here. There's 2 in the back actually for RPM, but yeah, pretty much getting there.
Here's how everything turned out with the full exhaust. You can see there's a little bend to avoid the shift linkage, and here's the headlights and blinkers working.
All right, so fast forward quite a bit of time. The radiator's all mounted up. You can see all the pipes are on. I painted this piece of intercooler piping, blow-off valve, new turbo's on. It's a Pulsar. The exhaust is done. The exhaust came out beautifully, I'd say. It's a full exhaust. If we go around to the back, it looks kind of weird without the bumper on, but once I get the bumper on, everything will be good. I still have to wrap it, so that's why I'm not 100% done. Interior, all put together. You can go around on the side, just show you some more. Here's this. I mounted the wideband under here. I just made a bracket and it's kind of angled upwards. Fuel tech's in the middle where the radio goes. I haven't wired everything in, but everything for the motor and all the lights is good. You can see everything's put back together. All the wires are hidden. There's some relays behind here. But yeah, it starts now. I'll get a few clips of it running and driving, some rollers, some stuff like that. But yeah. All right, so this project's kind of been like 2 steps forward, 1 step backwards. It's been taking forever, but I just pulled the motor again. It's the B20. So I don't know if I explained earlier, but cylinder 1 was burning oil, and I kind of had a feeling something was up. I kind of just sent it, you know. When I was taking it apart, the piston and rod slid out a little too easy, if that makes sense. So I definitely think it's something easy to fix, like a piston ring, something like that. But if we come over here, see, we got this new B18. This was the end goal for the Integra anyway. I wanted to use the B20 because I already had it, but I went and picked up a B18. I've been slowly building it. Scat rods, nip and pistons. It's DevCon now, so should take a beating. I'm gonna say right around 700 horsepower, so we'll see about that. But I guess this is kind of just an update. Got the motor out. I gotta pull the head off, the LSV kit. I'm gonna use the oil pan. Everything else I'm gonna keep on there. And then, yeah, I'll update you guys when I get this motor put together a little bit more. And then it'll be straight. Just as simple as throwing it in, you know, and starting it up. And bam, B18's in the car. You can see here, B18 B1, if it'll focus. B16A head. All of it's back in. The car starts, runs. Today, we just got some tires for these sick wheels. They're raised, real wheels. The second set of real wheels I've ever owned. Going on this bad boy, I think it's gonna look pretty crazy. We were trying to tune it last night and we were having some feeling issues. I'm pretty sure it's the pump because I just was doing it on wastegate, which is about 14 pounds of boost. We're running out of fuel, so I'm gonna go ahead and throw the old fuel pump from the hatch. As you can see, we got it right here. Into her. We got to pull the tank, unfortunately, because it is the older generation. So pull the tank, put the fuel pump in. We're going to throw these wheels on, see how that looks. They're wrapped in Neogen, I think they're called. Neogen tires. And yeah, I'll update you guys when we're driving it. We'll get some rollers taken and it'll be pretty sick. We got the new fuel pump installed on the assembly. You can see, where is it? There's the old pump. This is the old filter, I guess. First filter, I gotta wipe this off. But yeah, all this is on. Gotta throw that back in the tank. We just dropped it down a little bit from the car, not even all the way. But yeah. All right, here we got the wheels on. I think they go crazy with the purple. You can still see there's some lube around on the tires. I gotta wash the whole car. Another thing I want to be straight up with you guys. It's leaking some oil, so I'm gonna have to take some stuff apart. I think it's some cam seals. Not too sure. You can see there's some oil on the windshield. There's some oil right here. Some random stuff. Also, it's making some weird noise, so I'm gonna pull the pan, make sure everything's good. I didn't see any metal when I took apart or when I drained the oil after break-in, but there could be something. So I'm gonna check it all just to be sure. Yeah. Okay, so almost a week has passed. I've changed the cam seals, the oil pump seal. I re-siliconed the oil pump. The oil pan is bolted up again nicely. I changed the drain plug gasket. So it's not leaking. Nothing's leaking now. The weird sound, I kind of think that I was just tripping about it. Anyway, about 3 days ago, I took it out. There was a huge cold front. Super cold out, but I wanted to test it and make sure it wasn't gonna leak any more oil. Took it out, drove it probably, I'm gonna say 9 miles, and then this happened. Super, super unfortunate. I really haven't even got any driving done on this car, which really sucks because it keeps breaking. I don't know what's going on with this car. Like, just have bad luck with it, I guess. But I got super lucky. Threw the belt that I had from the hatch, ordered some new belts. So threw the belt on, started it up. Thank God it runs fine. We didn't hit any valves. The belt broke when I was around 3,000 RPM, so we're good with that. Everything's put back together. I did take it to the car wash. It's not super clean. It snowed right after I took it to the car wash, which sucks. But I got some of the lube off the tires. You could see, I think it looks fantastic with these wheels. Yeah, so a couple other things I gotta do is a boost controller. You can see I just have it straight to the turbo right now for the wastegate on the bottom. So I'm gonna put a boost controller. I'm running into some fueling issues. You've seen earlier I put a fuel pump in. The fuel pump helped a little bit, not a lot. I think these injectors are just too small. They're 1,000 cc. This turbo might be a little big too. It takes a while to spool up, but it also has this massive intercooler. Can't complain on that too much. I think I'm just gonna give it a little bit more timing. But yeah, I think for now I might lower the boost a little bit and then go from there. I don't wanna get injectors quite yet, just waiting on some funds. But yeah, I think it's coming together slowly but surely. Yeah. Here you can see I took the belt off of this. Here's the new belt. Another thing too, this belt was a cheap evergreen belt, probably around 40 bucks. Their evergreen racing belt. Yeah, definitely my fault for using it. But now we got some Gates RPM racing belts. If you guys need that part number, that's for a GSR, also for an LSV, which is what I run in every single car. I don't think I've ever owned a full GSR. I've had a B16, but I didn't really do anything cool with it. I think LSV is on top for sure. So now I'm gonna go ahead and put this new belt on the hatch, start it up, make sure that's all good. And yeah.
That's gonna do it for this video. Super long video, but I enjoyed working on this car. If you guys have a chance, you should check out my new website. It's in the description below. And thanks for watching.